It started with a single glance in that sterile elevator. The kind that strips you bare without a word. Michael leaned against the mirrored wall, his tie a noose of overpriced silk, and fixed his eyes on my badge. Intern. Huh, he drawled, loud enough for the cluster of executives to smirk along. Better grab a pen. Kid. We don't slow down for training wheels. His laugh echoed like broken glass. Sharp and unnecessary. As the doors slid open to the 47th floor, I felt the heat rise in my chest. That familiar burn of being reduced to nothing. But I swallowed it whole. Smiled politely. Said nothing. In that moment, I knew silence wasn't weakness, it was the blade I'd sharpen in the dark. New York summers in corporate towers are unforgiving. The air thick with ambition and recycled sweat. I arrived at Apex Dynamics every dawn, slipping through the revolving doors before the city fully woke. Not out of eagerness, but to carve out a space where I could breathe without being watched. The receptionist, Carla, a woman with tired eyes and a kind heart forged in overtime, started leaving me a stale bagel and lukewarm coffee on the corner desk they'd shoved me into. No plaque, no drawer, just a folding chair by the humming copier. Fuel for the fight, she'd whisper, oblivious to how prophetic it was. I'd nod, sink into the shadows, and listen. People reveal their souls when they think you're a ghost. Michael made damn sure I stayed spectral. He breezed past me in hallways, mangled my name, Sophie became Sarah or whatever, and once tossed his lunch receipt at me like I was the help. Since you're fetching anyway, he quipped with a wink that made my skin crawl. I pinned it to his quarterly report with a staple gun, circled the expense policy in blood red ink, and left it on his ergonomic throne. He never acknowledged it. But the slights piled up like unpaid bills, ignoring my input in strategy sessions, crediting my data breakdowns to his team, introducing me as the temp who types fast while fumbling through slides I'd fixed the night before. Each jab twisted deeper, reopening old wounds from a childhood spent proving myself in a world that dismissed quiet girls as fragile. But I didn't snap. I absorbed it. Let the pain fuel a quiet inventory of his vulnerabilities, his unlocked screens, his muttered passwords, the eye rolls from colleagues he thought were loyal. What Michael didn't know, couldn't have fathomed in his ego-fueled haze, was that this internship wasn't my desperate grasp at a resume line. It was orchestrated. My uncle, a shadow partner with enough shares to sway boards without showing his face, had slipped me in during early acquisition whispers. Watch from the trenches, he'd said over an encrypted line, his voice gravelly with years of cutthroat deals. Map the rot. I wasn't there to learn pivot tables. I was there to unearth fault lines. And Michael handed me the shovel with every dismissal. His arrogance wasn't just cruel, it was his Achilles heel, blinding him to the threat in plain sight. I filed away the moments, the way he berated junior analysts in whispers that carried, the inflated promises he made to investors over steak lunches, the way his leadership bred resentment like mold in the vents. By mid-June, the office hummed with unspoken tension, the merger looming like a storm cloud over Manhattan's skyline. Michael surrounded himself with sycophants, but even they cracked under his weight. During a late-night crunch, the lead accountant, Javier, vented to me over vending machine coffee. If he spent less time golfing with VCs and more on actual numbers, we wouldn't be drowning in red ink. I nodded, handed him the revised forecast I'd quietly amended, errors Michael had overlooked in his rush to impress. Playing invisible meant swallowing pride like bitter medicine, enduring the isolation that came with being unseen. The psychological toll of pretending his barbs didn't draw blood. But it bought me access to confidential drives, to off-the-record chats, to the pulse of a company on the brink. The day he barred me from the client pitch was the turning point. The slow burn igniting into something fiercer. I stood in the conference room threshold, clutching the polished deck I'd overhauled overnight, my heart pounding with the echo of past betrayals, friends who'd turned coats, family who'd underestimated. "Not for interns," Michael barked, waving me off like a stray dog. "We need pros in here." The client, a sharp-eyed exec named Harlan from the buyer side, caught the exchange, his brow furrowing in silent judgment. I retreated to the glass partition, expressionless, watching Michael flounder through features I'd scripted, crediting them to absent marketers while the demo glitched on issues I'd flagged weeks prior. His sweat beaded under the fluorescence, his buzzwords rang hollow. That night, alone in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, I bit back tears, the humiliation coiling into resolve. Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. From then on, I moved like smoke through the corridors. Uninvited, I slipped into engineering huddles, claiming learning ops, and no one batted an eye. The devs were buried in code, marketing was scrambling. I took meticulous notes, distilled them into actionable briefs, and funneled them to my uncle via a ghost alias. Within days, his approvals rippled back, bypassing Michael entirely. Invites trickled in, a cybersecurity drill where the auditor, Theo, quipped, "Why the intern tag? You know more than half this room." I shrugged, smiled thinly. But inside, the validation warred with the growing cost, the sleepless nights, the eroded trust in people, the way every interaction felt like a potential knife. Michael's empire was built on bluster, loudest voice wins, fastest credit grab climbs. In that cacophony, my silence gathered allies. I cataloged the hesitations, the way ops head Nadia paused before endorsing his timelines, the legal team's subtle grimaces at his creative contracts. The merger's undercurrents turned toxic. Whispers of due diligence exposing cracks. Michael, oblivious, leaked half-truths in calls, overpromising scalability while our systems groaned under patchwork fixes. I documented it all, timestamps, discrepancies, the quiet betrayals of his own words. Not out of spite alone, but from the deep-seated hurt of being erased. The psychological scar of invisibility that made me question my worth. When my uncle called on the secure line, time to lead. But from the shadows, I felt the weight of it. The price of this path, the loneliness of deception. The moral gray of watching a man self-destruct. July brought escalation. The tension coiling tighter. Michael's drafts, bloated with self-aggrandizement, crossed my desk and signed. I'd authored chunks, crunched the projections he mangled, yet his name crowned every page. I let it slide, simmering in the break room as the microwave hummed, my blood pressure sinking to its timer. Let him claim the glory, it would be his news. I began rerouting workflows, new threads for real contributors. Restricted calendars. Permissions locked like vaults. His inbox starved, his influence withered. He compensated with volume, bellowing in syncs, inserting himself into chains with looping in, but the betrayal stung him subtly. His paranoia budding as allies drifted. By August, the board's whispers turned to signals. A terse email, proceed quietly. I dismantled his transition vanity project, a slide deck of fluff, and his face plastered everywhere, rebuilding it on facts. Assigning roles based on merit. My name emerged, Sophia Reyes, M&A lead. Submitted under radar. It gained traction. Nods from Nadia. Theo, the CFO. Michael's exclusion wasn't sabotage, it was consequence. Born from the pain he'd inflicted. The systematic diminishment that had forged my resolve. But the victory tasted ashen, the isolation deepened. Trust in the system fractured. The investor luncheon at the opulent Hudson Club was the detonation. Michael arrived peacocking in his tailored suit, packets in tow, barking at aides. No extras, he sneered as I passed. The assistant checked her list. Sophia's confirmed. His facade cracked. Intern optics. Sure. I met his gaze evenly. Optics indeed. The room buzzed with power players. I took my seat at the head table. Decks distributed. Michael, relegated to the fringe, scanned the setup, his confidence fracturing as eyes turned to my revisions. My uncle didn't preamble. Over cleared plates, he announced, Sophia handles the merger. The silence was deafening. Michael's fork suspended, his world imploding. Pages flipped to the org chart, his title vanished. Mine ascendant. Mistake, he stammered. But voices piled on, assumed too much, inflated promises, briefed under alias. The betrayals cascaded, his leaks exposed, his dismissals recited. He deflated, eyes pleading for salvation that never came. I sat stoic. The psychological toll evident in my steady hands, the price of this ascent. The erosion of empathy. The scar of silence turned weapon. Monday's board vote sealed it, unanimous. My leadership immediate. Michael pitched desperately, voice cracking. But logs damned him, my flags. His hubris. You've overstayed, the chair intoned. He rose, defeated, the door clicking shut on his era. I lingered, signing the memo. The badge gone. My title etched. The merger advanced. Clean and unadorned. But at what cost? The quiet victory left me hollow. The pain of betrayal, his and mine, lingering like smoke. In reclaiming my voice, I'd paid with pieces of my soul, forever changed by the shadows I'd wielded.